So when we're talking about, well, it's not the sugar, but every time your blood sugar is going up.
The dietitians are telling us, that the experts are telling us, it's not the food. Like, do you not see where we're going wrong here?
And this is really important for type 1 diabetics to realize that.
But what's the right information? The right information out of the world that's going on at the moment.
So if carbohydrates bring nothing to the table nutritionally.
And it's not just carbohydrates.
Forget about the food that you're eating.
So if you eat proteins, here's the first one. You need to inject insulin.
Resolving my pre-diabetes.
If this is not going to help you, if you cannot lose weight on a low-calorie diet, well, then we don't know what to do.
But that's a medicine.
You know, we can argue the finer details.
Because this is what drives me crazy as well.
So if I would eat a mixed meal and include a lot of cheese or meat in it,
just lose weight.
What do diabetics do? They get taught to correct with orange juice or snacks like Haribo.
Yeah. And that's what happened to me. Is my doctor said you will be full-blown diabetes within 5 years. There's nothing you can do about it. It's genetic.
Doctors and influencers online, at best they will tell you that it's just about carbohydrates. You have to count carbohydrates.
And I only had this conversation with a really worried mother the other day. She sent me this message and she was telling me that her 16-year-old now is a type 2 diabetic. And I knew straight away what the problem was.
What is diabetes? What is insulin resistance? What's the difference between type 1, type 2? There's so much nonsense going on in the world and people have their own ideas about what it is. We have a type 1 diabetic and a former pre-diabetic. And then we have the expertise of somebody who's dealt with diabetics and blood sugar quite a bit. So we're going to get into all things diabetes, blood sugar, and insulin intelligence today.
Else is sick and fucking tired of seeing all the carnivore shit all over these fucking apps. No one cares if you only eat meat. Every single one of you have to identify by carnivore fucking Connie, carnivore Ken, whatever the fuck your name is, and you add carnivore to the end of it on your fucking bio is fucking weird. Weird. You're literally treating your diet like a fucking religion. A religion. A meat religion. Okay? Like, what in the absolute meat fuck is this shit? Your fucking boards with your eggs and your cheese and your fucking butter and your dates. Who cares? You can't shit. Your fiber intake is fucking zero, and you think you're just fucking trudging through life getting all healthy. Get the fuck out of here. No one cares. Your meat fucking ass, your meat farts, your meat sweats. No one wants to fucking
Today,
hear about it.
we talk blood sugar, diabetes, and Peter, let's just throw it over to you. For you being a type 1 diabetic, it is necessary for you to understand this. And a lot of people, we come from this point of thinking we know, the difference between the medical system's definition of diabetes, what the difference is between type 1, type 2, and why it's so important for you to have to understand this for your health, and your life depends on it. So let's just go from there.
Yeah, diabetes is a very complicated story. And of course, we have the difference between type 1 and type 2. It already goes wrong there with a lot of people not fully understanding the differences between those. I'm a type 1 diabetic for 16 years now. And I didn't get it from eating too much sugar. I didn't get it from not exercising enough or anything like that. It might have to do with diet or environment still, but it's unclear where type 1 diabetes is coming from. But so we mostly know type 2 diabetes, of course. So people think about type 2 diabetics being overweight, eating too much sugar, maybe also too much fat and all those things, and not moving their butt around. But for type 1 diabetes, that's certainly not the case. And you could also argue that for type 2 diabetes, that is not always the case. I mean, sometimes it is, probably, but a lot of times it also isn't. It's far more complicated. And in type 2 diabetes, of course, the body, that's what the doctors will most often tell, lacks insulin because you get insulin resistant. And in type 1 diabetes, your body lacks insulin because you actually lack insulin. So there is no insulin at some point. It takes some time, but after 5 or 6 years, after my diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, I learned that my pancreas was not able to produce insulin anymore. And type 1 diabetes basically means only that. You have a healthy body. I mean, if you follow a healthy lifestyle, and your pancreas is broken. So a small part of your pancreas is not able to produce insulin anymore. So basically, the short story is if you replace that insulin with injected insulin, everything should be all right. But not quite. That's the disappointing story. But still, if you follow a healthy lifestyle and you inject the proper amount of insulin, which is difficult, things should go all right. It becomes easier if you have to work with little amounts of insulin. And here comes the nice thing that type 1 diabetics basically have to do the same thing as non-diabetic people. Follow a healthy diet, little amounts of carbohydrates, at least restrict them. So I'm not going into the discussion if you should go zero or low carb here, but if you sensibly restrict carbohydrates, you'll have to deal with less insulin, and mimicking this broken pancreas becomes easier. That's the simple story that you end up with. I mean, there's a lot of nuance here. So, of course, you still have to deal with a lot of uncertainties, but by eating less carbohydrates, it becomes somewhat easier. Yeah. And of course, people know that if you eat a lot of sugar, and if you have used a CGM or measured your blood glucose, you'll get a big spike after a meal, and it will go down again. Or if you have type 2 diabetes, there is the problem as well. Of course, it won't go down anymore. So also for type 2 diabetics, eating less carbohydrates will help because you'll get a lower spike. You can correct it with less insulin, or in type 2 diabetes, your pancreas has to work less, and it stabilizes in time. And this is the biggest thing that you have to avoid, the glucose spikes. But there's a lot more about diabetes. It's not just about glucose. And I'm still learning, actually. So after 3 years of low-carb dieting, a lot happened. Because 5 years ago, let's say 5 years ago, I started to be more conscious of following a healthy lifestyle. I mean, I was always relatively healthy in terms of exercise and diet, not eating junk food. But I started cycling and that sort of things, and that brought a lot of stability. But there were still a lot of unexplainable things happening in daily life. So even if you follow a medium carb diet and you move a lot around, so your insulin sensitivity improves, there are still a lot of factors that come into play here. And it's not just carbohydrates. And that's really the most problematic thing currently, that doctors and influencers online, at best, they will tell you that it's just about carbohydrates. You have to count carbohydrates. And it's true, of course. But I would be dead if I'd be counting carbohydrates. Because counting carbohydrates, 0, well, I can just stop injecting insulin, right? No. And actually, I use about the same amount of insulin that a healthy non-diabetic individual has in its body during the day. So about 20 to 30 units. So that's how we measure insulin in terms of units. And you still have to dose that across the day. So if you eat proteins, here's the first one, you need to inject insulin. Doctors don't tell about it, because if you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, it's sort of becomes negligible in their opinion, which isn't true, because it's still there for about, I'd say 20-30%, the effect. So if I would eat a mixed meal and include a lot of cheese or meat in it, I will still also get a glucose spike like 3 or 4 hours later. And that was really frustrating in the years before I started low carb. I didn't know these things. So I'd be counting carbohydrates, and at some point you do this for years and you think like you're doing your best, counting everything correctly, and you probably are. with up to 10% margin or so. You inject insulin. There's also a margin of 20% uncertainty, I guess. And still it goes wrong all the time. Well, all the time, you are lucky sometimes, but you get these protein spikes, for example. What hormones play a role? Other hormones, diabetics, cannot produce insulin, type 1 diabetics, but glucagon will be overregulated, overstimulated. You don't produce almost zero amylin, I think, so that has to do with satiation. We're hyperinsulinemic, so that's a thing we should really talk about in this episode. We inject insulin, so we are constantly hyperinsulinemic in the system. So insulin is produced at the level of the pancreas, that's close to the liver, and the insulin flows directly through the portal vein, through the liver, and that's there where the insulin gets absorbed by the liver, and the liver responds to that. And there you have this balance between glucagon and insulin. And we, type 1 diabetics, don't inject it in our pancreas, of course. We inject it under the skin. So the insulin goes right into the whole body system. It's in our arms, in our legs, in our brain probably also, before it even reaches the portal vein in the liver. So besides that, we are hyperinsulinemic in the system, but we are also hypoinsulinemic at the level of the liver. And that's really problematic because the liver will now see a very low insulin level, and it will stimulate the glucagon. So, no, not quite actually. The glucagon will be relatively high compared to insulin at that point there. So this ratio is off by a factor of 4 to 10. So glucagon will have much more effect on the liver, and the liver starts to pump the glucose into the bloodstream. And I see that also on a low-carb diet. It's very difficult, and a lot of diabetics don't know this. But already before you start eating, you sometimes have to inject insulin. And that's not because you're eating fast carbs, because that's another reason why people as diabetics inject insulin way before, because they want to cover this high spike in time.
Yeah.
But you already want to have this insulin in your system at the level of the liver before you actually take a bite. That's really something I didn't know. And part of it is it's called the cephalic insulin phase. So before you eat, or even when you think about eating, your body will produce insulin and also glucagon. So the idea is, the insulin is there to prepare for digestion and absorption of glucose from the food. And the glucagon goes up because your liver is going to produce a little bit of glucose to kickstart your digestive system. And I mean, it's just silly. I inject a full unit of insulin sometimes to cover this effect. It can be tricky because, sometimes it's worse than other times. If you eat, for some reason, if you eat cheese, these type of effects can be larger than, and with red meat also slightly larger than when you eat fish, for example. But it's just crazy. All these things they don't tell about, and they don't tell about it, the doctors, because you inject, especially if you're on a high-carb diet, you inject like 6 or 8 units of insulin for a meal. Yeah, so what does this 1 unit of insulin still do? It's within an uncertainty margin, basically. And that's silly because, it's uncertainty margin. But if you are consistently removing it, you can be sure that you're always on one side of this uncertainty margin, right? You always are injecting insufficient amounts of insulin, or you are injecting insulin thinking that you're doing it for a different reason. Some type 1 diabetics, for example, inject too little insulin, and they compensate for it by increasing their basal insulin, which is the insulin that your liver your pancreas normally produces during the day, continuously, a low level of insulin. Well, of course, you can also increase that to sort of compensate for all the lack of insulin during your meal. And what happens? Of course, you take too much basal, so during the day, you'll trend low. because you have injected too much insulin that is working during the entire day. And also, this is not told by doctors. So doctors don't explain that as a type 1 diabetic, you're effectively a healthy person with these caveats that I talked about, that you will still be hyperinsulinemic because you inject under the skin. But besides that, you're a healthy person. So what you have to do is, even just disregarding lifestyle and what you do, whatever, you have to do exactly what your pancreas does normally if it's non-diabetic. Inject the right amount of insulin. So you have to cover the insulin need in the background. That's all that's there for 24/7 with the right dose. So if you don't eat, it should result in a flat blood glucose line, basically. And I do this sometimes if I go fasting or if I skip a meal. My blood glucose stays perfectly in range. Actually, that's are the moments that they are the best, because there are no uncertainty factors. I just have to mimic this smooth sailing of the pancreas, small amounts of insulin. So I make small errors. And if I make small errors, it will take 3 hours before my blood glucose trends low. So I will adjust my insulin temporarily, or in the worst case, I take a small tablet of glucose. And that's another thing where doctors really give the wrong advice, and that is to eat to bring your blood glucose in range. I mean, obviously, you have to do it if you have injected too much insulin. So in the acute phase, if you experience low blood glucose and there's insulin in your system, of course, you have to take some glucose to correct it. But that's a medicine.
Yeah.
And it's amazing if you look online on now, wherever, not just TikTok but anywhere, also around me in the hospital. What do diabetics do? They get taught to correct with orange juice or snacks like Haribo. And I mean, in a way, it's fine, but it's also wrong, because you turn medication into an eating moment. That's the reason why I don't like it.
Can I just ask that on that point, Peter? Is that the reason why, when we look at the HbA1c, is that the reason why it's an unreliable marker? Because
definitely.
Because this is what we're all hearing at the moment, that if it's gone really, really high, eating the carnivore way, we should be panicking. Now, my first question is, okay, why are you panicking? Like, how do you feel? Like, if you're telling me that, if I ask you the question, Peter, you've been doing carnivore now for a while, and I'm your doctor, and I done your blood work, and I see your HbA1c is probably over 6. It's really, really high. I'm going to ask you the question, how you're feeling. Now, if you turn around and say to me, Mark, I feel fantastic. What's the issue here? I feel that what we're doing is we're going off a system here. We're going off numbers. We're not focusing on health here. I think that's where the confusion is with me. And I try and explain this to people that, okay, these numbers are high, but I need to ask you the question.
Yeah.
So am I getting that right here?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you in most cases. And an A1C of 6 is somewhat high, I think, but I mean, it's unlikely that if you look at CGM data on the daily glucose levels, that those will be stable, or at least that they will be in the lower range. They'll probably be, if they are stable, they'll be on average a bit higher, which is not necessarily a problem. So if you have a A1C of 6 and your glucose levels during the day are around 100 or 105, I think it's fine, because it becomes problematic at 2 thresholds. The first one, the worst one, is, of course, which basically helps with diagnosing diabetes. That's actually why it's called diabetes. If your blood glucose goes above this renal threshold of about 180 or 1011 millimoles, you'll get sugar in your urine, but also lower, about 110, 120, I think, 130. You also start to enter the polyol pathway. So glucose there's too much glucose in your bloodstream, basically, and it gets converted to sorbitol and fructose. And fructose, of course, we know that glycates as hell.
Yeah.
But if you stay below those values, so that's also how I look at it right now. If you stay below those values, you are sort of safe. I mean, who knows what else is at play? I mean, there could be other things, but these are the two mechanisms, the most important ones causing complications at later stage.
Can I just ask one more question? Because I'm seeing this as well with clients at the moment that they're stalling, like say 6 months, 8 months into the carnivore diet. And when I get blood work, the one thing I'm noticing is the triglycerides are really, really high. It's over 100. Now, when I look at this, I'm like, okay, well, hang on a second. You're only eating protein and fat here. But why are your triglycerides over 100? Like I've seen like numbers between 160 and 180, which is quite high. So I'm scratching my head here, and I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to mess around here? And that's when I like, okay, this is a lipotoxicity issue. So I think I need to reduce the fat here. I think we need to find your fat threshold here, because I think that in time, if they keep doing this and they're flooding the body with too much fat, this can have an impact on the liver, and it can become fatty, and these can end up getting toxic, and it can end up developing fatty liver disease.
Well, Mark,
how do you work that one out?
Because here's something that I noticed with a couple people, like from my blood work stuff, my triglycerides just kept going down and down and down. I was eating no carbs, and the triglycerides were going down. Yeah. I had somebody go get blood work done, and their triglycerides were just marginally high, like not astronomically high, but marginally high.
Yeah.
And I asked them, I was like, "Did you fast before this blood test?" They're like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, did you eat anything?" And they said, "Yeah." And I was like, "What did you have?" They said, "Bulletproof coffee."
Yeah.
You just injected fat. Like you're now that's a false reading, because they've got fat in their bloodstream. Like it's not true. So I don't know if there's something about carnivores and that, because from everything that I've ever seen, triglycerides high, not around the fence, around the marker, but high is sugar. But that's happened now twice with people that I've dealt with. Their triglycerides were weirdly just above average. And I was like, this is kind of, their HDL was high. Their LDL was, that's another topic. Doesn't matter. But their triglycerides from their last blood test was just up a little bit. And it's such a margin, like a fractional increase. But that's what I was worried about that too. But I asked them and I was like, well, how long did you, I ate, but my blood test was in the morning. Right. I was like, okay, well, that's not a 12-hour fast.
Yeah.
So that would mean your LDL, your chylomicrons, everything's doing its job still. So that's not a true marker, right? And that's just something to be aware of too, to ask people, because you ask somebody if they're really fasting. Most people that aren't, oh yeah, of course I'm fasting. It's like that. No. For that marker, that's really important.
Yeah,
it's true. I mean, if you look around, people have some weird ideas about fasting. I got a question like, can you help me with, I'm going to do this for the first time, and I want to include some bone broth. Well, you're not fasting if you're doing that.
Yeah.
And the same story with fasted glucose levels. I'm sure that there is a lot of noise there, because we got things that I will always mention them when I talk about type 1 diabetes, but they are also there in normal persons. Dawn phenomenon, feet on the ground phenomenon. Yeah. So when you wake up, it can be a mess, really. If you get a blood glucose also as a healthy individual of 105, 110 in the morning, it could be all right. Yeah. Check it with the CGM, because I mean, we shouldn't look at this value anyway. This fasted glucose. I mean, we should also look at it, but just on the graph.
If I were to get my blood test an hour after I wake up, I would be diabetic.
Yeah.
And that's I've seen it with my CGM. I've seen it with pricking my finger, because I mean, I was pre-diabetic, and that's what happened to me. Is my doctor said, you will be full-blown diabetes within 5 years. There's nothing you can do about it. It's genetic. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not like, and that's what I wanted to talk to you a bit about, Mark, too, is because like there's so many buzzwords flying around: insulin resistance, high hemoglobin A1C, blood glucose. And you made a good point about how do you feel. And in my opinion, Peter has to be aware of his insulin because it's
Yeah.
a life threat. Now, this is so important that everybody, if they acted like a type 1 diabetic and just understood their insulin, we'd probably all be better off. But everybody gets caught up in this and that and this and that. And I'm with you. I tracked my blood sugar vigilantly, did experiments for 2.5 years, CGMs, pricking my finger, testing my ketones, trying to figure it all out. And you know what?
Yeah.
I had to look at the trend, and I had to look at sort of different. If I did a heavy workout the night before in the evening, my blood sugar was affected in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I was fasted for a day, if a 2-day fast, it was different. And I found like my blood glucose would spike randomly. I don't know, maybe I had some bad news or some stress. And if I were to go
and that's perfectly all right.
If I went to get a blood test at that time, watching my CGM, I would have been a diabetic, and they would have given me metformin. It's like
exactly. And see that's what I'm worried about, because that's what we're seeing at the moment is that when these numbers are high, you're not getting the relevant information. It's just like, oh my God, these numbers are high. There's nothing we can do. You should be doing this. You should be doing this. You should be doing this. Yeah. And I only had this conversation with a really worried mother the other day. She sent me this message, and she was telling me that her 16-year-old now is a type 2 diabetic. And I was like, okay, you need to show me the diet. Just show me the diet. And she was like, okay, he's eating healthy. I said, no, I need to see the diet. And I knew straight away what the problem was. I said, listen, there's your issue right there. And these doctors are getting ready to put this young lad on metformin. And that's what really, really pisses me off. Yeah. Now, when we look at this is what I'm talking about, the HbA1c. If you're a carnivore and they're going up, again, I'm going to ask you the question, how do you feel? Okay. Now, if your blood sugars are being increased, like this young man at the moment, I can guarantee if I sat him down here right now with him and asked him the conversation, how do you feel? Yeah. He will tell me he doesn't feel good at all.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Now, when we look at insulin resistance, this is what drives me crazy, because this is what I'm hearing at the moment, that insulin resistance is the driver to diabetes. It has nothing to do with sugar. And I'm like, okay, all you need to do pretty much is go out and buy a CGM. They're about 40 quid. Go out and buy a CGM. When you're eating your fruits, your carbohydrates, whether they're complex, simple, whatever it is, you eat those carbohydrates and you let me know what's happening to your blood sugar. Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm asking the simple question: what are we measuring in the blood? Yeah. Simple question. That's it.
Well, I have a HbA1c story too, because this was something 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I started low carb. That was like, you had to figure it out, and everybody's like talking about Randall cycle, insulin resistance, blah 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 blah. But the whole thing is every body works a little differently. We all have different stress factors. The diet, it's like the arguments that people say about these blood sugar spikes. You have to look at what the mechanism is. Why does Peter have to inject insulin? Because elevated blood glucose could kill him. So when we're talking about, well, it's not the sugar, but every time your blood sugar is going up, the reason why it has to be taken out of the bloodstream is because it's toxic, it's damaging. So that argument doesn't wash. Now the HbA1c thing with me, when I got a hold of this and I started like the blood test 6 months later, my HbA1c was way down. But then the next year, it was creeping back up, like almost like it went from like 6-ish to down to 5-ish. And then it started creeping up and it was 5.4. And I was like, I reached out to Bart K, because this was before like insulin resistance was getting popular, but nobody was really talking about this. And he mentioned the red blood cell thing. Well, your red blood cells are you're healthier. That's actually good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you have to confirm that, of course, if you do the test.
And see, that's only a problem when the red cells get damaged. Yeah. If the red cells are getting damaged, it's a problem. But if they're getting healthier and they're living longer, then what's the issue?
And then there's the other side of this with all the fruit people. And I mean, I know a lot of carnivore doctors have talked about this, and their danger side of it is that fructose isn't measured until it glycates, but they don't pick it up on the HbA1c. So that could be a false positive. And this is the thing that gets back to your point, Mark. You need to look at what these mechanisms are. Like from Peter's perspective, he needs to take care of his glucose control because this is life or death. But everybody really needs to. And how you feel, look at all the symptoms of like late. If you're type 2 diabetic and you're not taking care of it, like all the doctors say, we're going to cut off you're going to go blind, you're going to have neuropathy, you're going to get cut off limbs. These are symptoms to the point of like absolute devastation to your body. But you can start to pick that up because I remember brain fog. I remember feeling sore. I remember being inflamed.
Yeah.
And now I'm not. And that's where, you know, I don't know what the perfect diet is. I have my opinions and my ideas, but I know how I felt. And when I cut out sugar, specifically with seed oils, that did everything. Everything changed. Then when I cut out plants,
when it comes to diabetes, insulin resistance, that should in most cases indeed be the big one. And there's just one thing I would like to add to what you said, is that when we talk about the A1C being unreliable, which it is, we have to be careful. We always have to confirm the idea of our red blood cells living longer by checking our CGM data, or maybe even in the lab do a test on your red blood cells.
Well, I mean, that's usually a blood panel comes with it, right? So you can see your red blood cells, and a lot of anomalies where I've found with carnivores. There's certain ones that you have to look if you don't have a baseline. Like, and that's the thing what pisses me off about a lot of doctors. They do, oh, you don't need a blood test. You go like, I want to get my full blood panel done. I want my liver, my white blood cells, my red blood cells, all my hormone. You don't need it. It's like the fasting insulin paradox, right? We all know that this is a very big problem. Why doesn't the medical system just issue this test? Like, what?
Let me give just really a big example on this one, because it costs about $40-50 to do a C-peptide test. And what happens? A lot of people get diabetes at later age when they are 30, 40. And if you don't do any measurements, it's unclear whether it's type 2 diabetes, because some of these people might be a bit overweight, type 1 diabetics as well. And so they think type 2 diabetes, they put you on metformin, and it improves the stuff because, it will suppress glucagon and it will lower your blood glucose for a while the type 1 diabetes, if you have it, progresses. This is called LADA, so late onset diabetes, and it's very slowly developing. In a sort of way, I also had the same when I was 25. It took quite a while. And do this C-peptide test always. I mean, it's crazy.
And you mentioned that.
So the C-peptide basically tells you if your pancreas is still working. And it goes two ways. So it will show you if there's type 1 diabetes, if it's low, but it will be also extremely high if you have type 2 diabetes. So that's for discovering type 2 diabetes as well. It's even better than A1C. I mean,
and what you're saying, Peter, this is how you know, because if you're a type 1 diabetic and you over bolus or you're over insulining all the time, you're not being aware of it. You just insulin. You can become type 2.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
So that tells you right there that there's something. And then type 2 diabetics that are doing the same thing, their pancreas burns out. They become type 1 diabetic.
And that's what's going to lead to dementia then, type 3.
So if you
Type 2.
So it's going in that direction.
If we know these are two extremes of the same coin, it's definitely something, right? And it's what people don't realize. It's like insulin resistance. There's so many arguments about what it is. And from what I've gathered with my research and my, being involved with this and talking to people and resolving my pre-diabetes, you have to control your insulin. Get your insulin down, but you have to control your glucose, because that will be the easiest way to we can argue the finer details about how, like Peter said before, how many carbs or what's the threshold. But those glucose roller coasters that are constantly elevating insulin, whether you want to call it Randall cycle or, insulin resistance, whatever it is, that is overloading your system in a dangerous way. And you have to get that shit in order.
And people need to understand that when it comes to glucose, your body can produce glucose itself. It's very, very simple. It can produce it through the liver. Your body produces it through gluconeogenesis. This is what we're trying to explain, that we're not saying if you're a type 1, you should never have glucose ever again. Your body can actually produce this itself.
Yeah, and I don't
by eating animal meats.
And
You
I
know,
don't
that kind
agree
of
with
way.
all these doctors. There's like Dr. Rob Sivis. I mean, I've listened to him. I mean, some of the stuff he says, I completely agree with. But he says that there's like something that insulin burnout, where or sort of
Yeah,
insulin
insufficiency, I think.
Mm.
insulin stagnancy, and now it's like, okay, well, you gotta eat some carbs sometime to keep the mechanism going. And then there's Zane Griggs saying you need carbohydrates because gluconeogenesis is a stress.
Yeah, well,
Well,
let me just say that he's totally
stress.
wrong there, because insulin insufficiency on a low carb diet, biggest nonsense, because I inject insulin.
Yeah.
If I eat a meal, 4 to
Yeah.
6 units of insulin.
Yeah.
That's a bolus, a big peak of insulin. If I exercise, I'll have to inject sometimes 2 or 2.5 units of insulin, another peak. So my kidneys will be stimulated, my thyroid will be happy, no problem at all. And look at the total insulin need of the day.
Yeah.
And that's also how you should look at whether you're type 2 diabetic or not. Look at how much insulin you are producing across the day, not just your average blood glucose level. I mean, add the CGM to that, but do these fasted insulin levels to see if in the morning you are able to suppress this dawn phenomenon with little insulin, then you're healthy. And add to that the C-peptide. If C-peptides are high, apparently you have been producing a lot of insulin during the day, and that's really a red flag if that's the case.
And I think a lot of people, we don't like, I know Mark will agree with this too. It's like, what the hell would we have done without this stuff? Like, what would you have done? Our survival compared to now, our modern day ways, what people obviously lived without plants. People obviously lived with plants. What's the difference? We wouldn't have been able to get our blood tested. And I'm sure there's some some people would have, whatever, natural selection, survival of the fittest. But there was cultures and civilizations that lived with an ancestral way of eating without any insulin, without any glucose pills, without, so it's possible to do these things. And I think our human mechanisms, we tend to overthink them. Like, that's my opinion. If you just get back to Mother Nature, like gluconeogenesis is a mechanism in your body that is there. It's probably never been used for 50 years for most people. Like they've been eating so high sugar out of the normal range
So, no, sorry, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, but then, and that's the thing that I have a tough time with like all this stuff. It's great to understand it, but when, like, from Peter's perspective, he needs to know this stuff. He needs to understand this. We should all have some kind of education in these mechanisms. In my opinion, I believe there's a reason why we don't. It's because they want us sick. It's clear. But what would we have done without this? Like, what would your natural, proper, and it just comes down to first principles, species-specific, proper human diet. Now, there's probably a spectrum of that, but it wouldn't have been with modern foods. And I know, Peter, we mentioned before with doctors, they just tell you to manage your carbohydrates. They don't mention the nutrition side. And that's where people argue seed oils. I don't know if seed oils cause anything. I just know they weren't around 150 years ago.
Exactly.
So there's no place for them in a human being's diet. That's it.
And we need to get back to reality here. I mean, it's not just about diabetes. It's like there's so many other problems that are going on in the world at the moment. So many. You've got so many problems in the world at the moment: obesity, fatty liver disease. The list goes on and on and on. I don't want to go into too many of them.
And what you're saying there, Mark, and Peter and I had a little chat before. And Peter, you mentioned. Sorry, I'm going to throw you under the bus here, but you mentioned that there was there were certain times where you weren't feeling too great. What are you doing about that? What are you just going to start injecting insulin? Or are you going to just bring in,
or quit the carnivore diet or something like that?
Yeah.
No, of course not. I mean,
like,
you can still get ill as well.
It doesn't make any sense. Like that's what it comes down to. Like, okay, you're telling me that you're on the carnivore diet, you're feeling great, but because you've seen the number increase, you're going to go against that. You're going to add in more. You're going to add in more sugar to lower your blood sugar. Honestly, it just doesn't make any sense. But going back to what I was just saying earlier, I mean, you look at around. I mean, I'm dealing with 2 type 1s at the moment. Now, I've been told many times that a type 1 cannot gain weight. I just call that
that's
rubbish, absolute
it's
rubbish.
quite the opposite. Yeah.
I'm dealing with one at the moment, and he's over 22 stone. Now I don't know what that is in pounds. It's probably over 300 pounds or something like that. But
That's
he's a big unit. Trust me.
14 pounds
big
per
guy.
stone in the North American contingency.
So yeah, so that's well over 300 pounds. Now you cannot tell me that this is just genetic. You cannot just tell me that this is just a disease. I'm sorry. I'm telling you, like you're not gonna try and explain that to me. So when I hear this, that type 1, it's very, very hard for a type 1 to gain weight. I'm like, listen,
Well,
it's wrong. It's
Mark,
absolutely wrong.
Yeah, well,
In
that
my-
are all the reasons that I mentioned just 15 minutes ago. Why type 1 diabetics are actually prone to gaining a lot of weight. I mean, besides, of course, when they are getting diagnosed, because then they have no insulin in their body, so they are in cachexia, then your body starts to destroy even muscle tissue. So yeah, sure, you'll lose weight. But after that, no, I also experienced it myself. It's so easy to gain weight, and I'm quite sure. I mean, if I show my belly, it's never as nice a six pack, even if I'm trained, because I mean I can do it with a lot of putting more effort in it than I want to lose that last bit of weight. But you're injecting insulin, so it's very easy to gradually increase the insulin. So
Can I just ask one question on that, Peter, just before I go to Tony for a second? When you say training, does that impact your insulin with the type of training that you're doing? So let's say, I know you did an experiment there a few weeks ago where you were doing a lot of cardio.
Mm-hmm.
So does that impact the spikes in insulin? Or again, do I have that wrong as well?
Blood sugar.
Your blood sugar,
well, not so much. Well, you're asking about the difference between cardio and weight training, for example.
Yeah, like let's say you're doing too much. Will that spike blood sugar? Will that stress out the hormone?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you do it too much, if you're overstressed, it's like with not sleeping enough. You'll be more responsive to glucagon, probably that sort of thing. So, liver is more active, and you'll have to produce more insulin. So, we're not even talking about insulin resistance here. Just you have to counter more glucagon, and of course you'll also probably get a bit more insulin resistance if you're ill or stressed. But
so just one more question. So would it be better then, say if you're dealing with a type 1, you're type 2, you move them away from that? You just focus mainly on the steps, the resistance training. You try and keep the blood sugars as low as you possibly can. That will help with the diet, but it will also help if you're factoring in like lifestyle, keeping the stress low. You're keeping your training volume low, because this is actually going to keep everything pretty much low, your blood sugars low, because we know that's not just down to diet. You can get these blood sugar spikes from poor sleep, overtraining, under eating, all that kind of stuff. So would it be fair if you're dealing with a type 1 and a type 2 to monitor training and just make sure that you're not doing as much? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. The ideal case is probably, and I also don't follow that ideal all the time, is to do light cardio, like a brisk walk. And I'll just say do the 10,000 steps a day. I mean, I don't believe that number, but be active, walk 5 kilometers a day, and be active in the house or something like that.
Don't be
sedentary. And do weight training.
Yeah.
Basically, because if you're just a housewife and doing work at home and you're not even walking 10,000 steps, can be perfectly fine. Really, it's actually the best.
100%.
Now, Peter, I have a question for you, because this is something that's popped up. Like I put on a CGM once or twice a year. People are like, well, why? It's because I like to know what's going on. It's just I like to see, and then I do a couple tests, and just to see how my blood sugar is working, see how things are going. And, it comes down to like you go to the doctor and you want a blood test for something. There you go. Right. And I have a question for you, Peter, because what I've found, and this kind of touches on the whole symptoms and how you feel. Over the last couple years, I got points where my CGM, I don't change the alarms. Like the alarms is basically your standard type 1 diabetic. My blood sugar dips really, really low, and it starts screaming at me, but I feel nothing. Like, and then within, and I'm sure this is the difference between you and me, but within, I would say less than half an hour after that, the the glucose starts to just come back up. But and we're talking, this line is like it's like this. But what would you say to that? Like, do you think that your body gets more efficient at regulating this? Because someone would say, "Oh my God, you're going to go
because of your low carb diet." You mean?
What's that?
Because of your low carb diet.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I noticed. I think one time Sean Baker said the same thing. But it's like, this would be dangerous for a type 1, regulating. But I don't feel any symptoms. It's not like I get lightheaded or dizzy or want to fall down. But my blood sugar is like almost at 3. And, I don't know. It's like, I just looked at it and went, well, we'll give it an hour and see what happens. And it usually always comes back. But
no, that's just fear mongering from doctors. I mean, obviously, if you follow a standard diet, it is dangerous because you'll have high levels of insulin in your body. And if you're trying to mimic normal insulin levels as a type 1 diabetic, of course, you'll be off by 10%. And being off by 10% at those low blood glucose levels is highly dangerous. But I'm like you, basically. I am low, feel great. My brains probably take more ketones and that sort of things. Yeah. And I look at the CGM half an hour later. And it goes up and it's at 4 again, for example.
Sorry, Tony. Is that true, Peter, that no matter what food that we eat, you're still going to get a spike in blood sugar? Whether you're eating carnivore, whether you're eating the standard, obviously if you're eating the standard, it's going to go a little bit higher. But if you're eating like carnivore, you're still going to get, no matter what time of the day you're eating, you're still going to get a slight insulin spike.
Yeah, I think it has to do with how your pancreas is everyone's pancreas is individual and hormonal system. So some people are really good at keeping flat lines even if they eat meat. And some aren't, and they'll go up to 110 or 115 or 120 even. And they stay there a bit. And personally, I don't worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it, like from a type 2 perspective. Like, you got to look at it, it's small numbers, small changes, and you don't have any huge glucose excursions. You're gonna get a better baseline. It's just, if you've been eating for 30 years unaware of this stuff, rocking your blood sugar 15 times a day, and you go to maybe one meal that's got a little bit of a carbohydrate, or you even have, God forbid, have a dessert, that blood sugar is going to be way better and in way more control. It's gonna come down. And I mean, and that's the argument I had with my doctor. I was like, how can my fasting blood sugar go up when I'm not eating carb? That would mean gluconeogenesis is dangerous, because that would be the only way that it would go up.
Makes evolutionarily no sense.
I'm sorry, Zane Griggs, but my gluconeogenesis never spiked my blood sugar past 10. Okay, the pumpkin pie did.
Can I just ask a question, Peter? Because you saw the messages I showed you a couple of days ago. This guy was absolutely convinced that he needed the carbohydrates in his diet. Now, what was the misinformation here? Because this is what I couldn't understand. This guy was absolutely intent that his pancreas is not working and he needs to add more carbohydrates in. Now, the more I kept on reading the messages, I was like, this guy is just not making any sense here.
His pancreas isn't working. Why is he adding carbohydrates?
Yeah,
that's what I was like. And I was like, he was absolutely intent that I was spreading misinformation here. And then he had somebody else coming in that he was saying, and this woman was saying that this information is going to get people killed. So I was like, hang on a second. Like, this, first of all, this is just advice. And this is why I was quite keen on getting Peter on, because he's a type 1. He knows this better than I do. I have an idea how it works. But obviously Peter knows a lot better. And like I said at the very beginning, Stephen Thomas is going to go a little bit deeper into this, because he's been reading blood work now for the last 20 years. So he knows this area really, really well. But I just couldn't understand what was the misinformation, Peter? Talk me through that.
Well, this was a very complex situation, because the guy is a type 3 diabetic, and type 3 diabetes in the medical world is not the one that's introduced probably by Anthony Chaffee or somebody else. It's not Alzheimer's, but type 3 diabetes is basically a sort of type 1 caused by injury of the pancreas. So after an accident or so. So this guy can also probably produce little or no glucagon. So for him, personally, he is probably right that it's not a good idea to fully exclude sugar, but he needs it basically probably as a medication to basically cover the missing glucagon function.
So he
of
would
the
he
body.
would he would need the glucose tablets. He wouldn't need it coming
Yeah.
from exogenous carbohydrates.
But
Yeah,
Mark,
well, they
I wanna
are
say
exogenous,
something.
of course, but
I want to say something. It doesn't matter. Small numbers, small.
yes, yeah,
small
no,
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
this is
definitely,
not an
because
excuse. This is not an
yeah,
excuse to eat like a bunch of shit, right?
That's
Like
what I was saying. That's what I was
Yeah.
saying to Peter like the other day. No matter what his argument is, I'm just saying it from a logical point of view. He doesn't need any carbohydrates in his diet at
yeah.
all.
What he should do
That's
probably is during the day take tiny amounts of glucose, so not even full tablets, because one tablet, say it's 3 grams, that's about the amount of glucose in your bloodstream.
Yeah.
He needs to keep that bloodstream level up this at this 3 grams level, let's say, so
Yeah.
the normal blood glucose levels. So it's a bit like me when I have hypoglycemia. I'll take a little bit of glucose to correct my blood levels, because
yeah,
that's the only way, effectively, and that's holds true for him as well. But as soon as he starts to add any exogenous carbohydrates in the form of food,
yeah,
that's not needed.
You're
And
dealing with
he was applying this idea probably to type 1 diabetes, because he will probably also know just the basic story of type 1 diabetics. And what doctors always tell is like, yeah, you have to eat carbohydrates to keep your blood glucose up. And they'll say to me like, oh, you're low carb, that's dangerous, and you'll produce ketones, that's dangerous. That's another story yet. But they think that I'm going to be hypoglycemic all day. And I am not, because we talked about gluconeogenesis, and it's there, of course, for one. But I feel that on a low-carb diet, being fat adapted, my gluconeogenesis is actually ramped up. So if I go out for a walk, my glucose can actually rise from walking. That was never like this in the past. And that's not because I've become insulin resistant or anything. I mean,
it's still like, I feel you, Mark, because like it doesn't mean this or that. It means your body, to run efficiently, you don't want to give it shock. You don't want to shock the system. It doesn't matter. So if carbohydrates bring nothing to the table nutritionally, they wouldn't be food for humans. So needing glucose is a molecule that our bodies require for certain functions. You would have to adjust to get the most pristine glucose source possible to do the least amount of damage and play around with this thing. It's not about just, oh, I need to eat. And that's where people get, it's like, we always talk about this stuff like we need to do.
Yeah.
That's the point I was coming across. I was like, okay, well, no matter what you're throwing at me, all I'm telling you is this: you don't need to get it from eating carbohydrates. I'm not saying you shouldn't give your body the glucose it needs. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
And I kept on repeating this to him. I kept on repeating this over and over and over and over again. That I'm not saying you should come off.
I understand that you were in a situation where this guy was just basically dismissing everything that you said, because he just saw your message the first time and he thought, oh, this is just some average guy that doesn't know anything about diabetes, and he's saying that you need to cut out all the insulin, as if you should not inject insulin anymore. Of course you're not saying that. But
and the other side of that too is like, okay, well, you need to eat carbohydrates. What carbohydrates? What are they going to do? How fast are they going to absorb, digest? What are they going to do to your gut? Because I'll tell you, I know from like knowing Peter for long enough now, fiber messes up the whole system.
Yeah.
So if this guy's like, well, what are you saying? You need carb. Well, what do you need? You need glucose. Let's make this real. Like our body,
fiber is coping. I mean, that's what it is. It's a trick to reduce the effect of the stuff, the toxins that you're ingesting, basically.
And Peter, here's a little thing for people to realize. Okay, when you're having a hypo and your blood sugar is dipping really, really low, and you need to bring that blood sugar back, do you want to eat sugar, or do you want to eat a bunch of grains and rice?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
You need glucose as fast as possible, with the fast absorption as possible. So
that's really a huge, heavy instinct. It's really deep.
And see,
You
this is
just
what
sit down
this
for a
is.
plate of pasta, right? No, that's probably
Yeah,
not.
and
the
see,
best idea.
this is what's driving me crazy about this Zane Greg fella, because he's absolutely convinced that the main issue here is down to oxidative stress. Now, are you telling me if I eat carbohydrates, this is going to reduce my stress?
No.
It's gonna impact my body the right way?
Yeah.
Like, think about this for a second.
Yeah.
Just think about this for a second. All of us, most of us in the world, are feeling like shit at the moment. Why? Because we're eating the wrong fucking food. It's not just
Okay.
processed food, fiber, carbohydrates. It's all impacting the body the wrong way.
So I have a story.
And then when you factor that in with lifestyle and what you're doing in the gym, family, it's all stress. Sitting in, looking at your phone all day, looking at the TV all day. Guess what that's doing? Your stress levels are going straight through the roof.
No shit. And I have a story, guys. This is. I helped some friends of mine that were vegans. I taught them to eat eggs, and they're now ovo-lacto vegetarians, but they eat mostly eggs. They cut out sugar and carbohydrates. When my friends went back to Chile to his place, and his sister has an autistic, his nephew's autistic, would not make eye contact for his whole life. He's 6 years old, autistic. They asked him what he was doing because he looked so great, and he told them their diet. They cut out that child's sugar within 2 days. That child was hugging his mom, looking at him in the eye. You tell me that sugar wasn't the problem. Whatever. You know what I mean? And that's obviously an extreme side, but this is what happens to people. We just get different symptoms. And what you're saying, Mark, like that's the whole point. You can't tell me that all of a sudden this stuff is good for us. Like this whole nonsense. And that's why I'm happy we have Stephen Thomas coming on, because when that sugar diet bullshit was going on, he was awesome with showing that you don't get kicked out of ketosis. So like, and he did some great stuff, sort of countering that argument, which is, it's ridiculous. And
let me give a diabetic perspective also on the sugar diet, because this is what happens. People see that something works in a certain way, and then they start to think that it's healthy. Yeah. And there is a sugar diet for diabetics as well, and it's known as Mastering Diabetes from these two guys you probably know. And, well, it works compared to a standard diet. You'll see your A1C go down, your blood glucose control improves. What they don't measure is fructose glycation. They don't show continuous glucose measurements. I've never seen them. I've also not seen really low A1Cs, and on a high carb diet, I have my doubts about those elevated A1Cs. I mean, on the carnivore diet, maybe with longer red blood cell life, but if you're eating a lot of fruit and grains and all this stuff, probably not. But it's an improvement in terms of diabetes management for sure, and it's probably healthier than a standard diet as well.
And I know the guys you're talking about, Peter, and they just look like the model of health. Hey, they look great, vibrant skin, beautiful, like active. Like, yeah, right.
Yeah. But that's another thing, because you guys know I came from a rugby background. Now, I'm still friends with these people that used to play rugby. I can tell you now that I think it's around 4 or 5 of these people are type 2 diabetic at the moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when I look back at the diet that we were told to eat from these top experts, these coaches, as I mentioned many, many times, our diet was around 70% carbohydrates, a lot of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And that's how I blew up. Like, I put on the weight so quickly. People don't believe me that in 7 years I was able to put on a shitload of weight.
I see some pictures, buddy. It's like,
and I'm like, you've no idea. Like, people don't understand that I was addicted to these foods. I could eat, honestly, I could eat nonstop. I could eat like 6, 7, 8, 9 times a day easily.
That's the problem, Mark and Peter. Like, I love it that you're here, because like you've got that one side that that's undeniable. Like you've got such a great take on it because it's necessary. And I mean, I've said it before. We've said it before. If everybody treated their diet like they were a type 1 diabetic, just and just managed your diet like that, we'd all probably be better off. But Mark, what you're touching on, and how many people are getting type 2 there's trends that you can look at in the world. And what is diabetes? Diagnosed is elevated blood sugar. Past a certain point, you get diagnosed with diabetes.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that whole disease process hasn't been happening for decades.
Exactly. It's
So
over a period of time. Yeah.
by the time you get diagnosed, where's your sugar addiction? Where's your gut stability? Where's your pain tolerance? Where's your inflammation? Where's your brain at? All this stuff. If we'd known about this when we were children, at least we could have a little bit of, most people would have maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit more understanding of this stuff, because by the time they get there, I've seen people that give up. They just give up. I can't stop eating the shit. I don't know what to do now. And now they're just part of the system.
Can I just add a point there, Tony? Because this is what drives me crazy as well. When we see somebody who's obese, we automatically in our head just think, okay, these guys are healthy. We know they're unhealthy, but what's the right information? The right information out of the world that's going on at the moment, just lose weight. Forget about the food that you're eating. Just go on a low-calorie diet. If this is not going to help you, if you cannot lose weight on a low-calorie diet, well, then we don't know what to do. We need to put you on a fucking
more
GLP-1
medication.
Injection. Yeah, we need to put you on a GLP-1 injection. If you just all of a sudden develop type 2 diabetes, we haven't got a clue what to do with this. We haven't got a clue. It's got nothing to do with the food. The dietitians are telling us, that the experts are telling us, it's not the food. Like, do you not see where we're going wrong here? It's like, what do you define as healthy? What do you define as, when you look at someone who's really, really struggling metabolically, what do you define as health? Because at the moment, the way you're defining health at the moment now is just bullshit. It's not working. It's not working. If it was working, half the world wouldn't be on fucking medication. Yeah. You see where I'm going here?
And you look at obese people that switch to a carnivore, animal-based, even low-carb keto. The ones that start to eat healthy lose the weight really fast, and the ones that are just, you're just trying to feel good. People get, and I know this is a big, it becomes an issue, because like somebody who wants to lose 10 or 15 pounds, they see all these magical weight loss stories and they think it's just going to happen. Like, there's a lot to go with. And if you eating healthy is a different way. Like how well your body absorbs nutrients, needs to be nourished, is a different conversation than needing to shed a couple pounds of weight. And it's unfortunate because it's both sides. You know what I mean? And it's just, you see everybody's a little different, but your body needs essential nutrients, vitamins, minerals, protein, and energy. If you're giving your body those things, we can argue what brings what the
and
best.
Where are you going to get those vital nutrients from carbohydrates and fiber? Like, tell me exactly where you're going to get them.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, but you made a good point, Mark, that diabetes is always discovered too late, type 2 diabetes. Yeah. And that's really a problem, because you have had like decades of malnourishment, and your body, your intuition is totally destroyed. Yeah. And you're at the point now that you have to inject insulin to deal with your type 2 diabetes, because it has it has entered the acute phase. You have to take this insulin to lower your blood glucose. So you have to, in the initial phase, you have to, for just acute health, you have to inject loads of insulin. That's going to steer you totally in the wrong direction, because that's exactly what's happening with type 1 diabetics as well. It's going to be difficult to reduce your food intake and to start to eat. Think about eating a proper human diet.
And
basically.
Something insidious, Peter, that you mentioned too, because if you're presenting with a type 1 situation, you're probably really, really hurting. Like, there's a lot of shit going on. Most type 2 diabetics have no fucking clue that they're even on the threshold. How many blood tests did I get before I was 45? Before I started becoming, I didn't ever go to the doctor. You just assume this shit is not brain fog, chronic pain, fatigue is just getting older, and just your life.
And you cannot tell me, if you develop type 2 diabetes and all of a sudden you have to lose a limb. You have to lose a limb.
Then you are way too far.
Really bad. Yeah, it's gotten really, really bad. And then after that, once it's all done, I'm gonna feed you more carbohydrates
Yeah,
after it's done.
here's some Jello after
I mean,
surgery.
Honestly, it's
Yeah.
just it just makes me so really angry.
But in
really
all those
does.
cases, when you look back, you do realize that actually you were feeling it, because
Oh, for
you
sure.
were feeling
Yes.
like crap, basically.
That's the thing about, what we've all done and been doing this long enough now is like, I didn't know what feeling good was until I felt it.
Yeah.
I had good days in my 20s and 30s. I had very bad days, but I thought that was normal until you come to this feeling good clarity. You can't
Yeah.
describe it to people. And it's unbelievable how resilient our bodies are, where we just deal with things because it's just the way it
Yeah.
is,
Well, this is maybe a nice occasion also to fit in this topic, because the type 1 diabetics, they basically still have to deal with this issue, especially if they are not on a diet like I am, or any low carb, medium carb diet. And it is the fact that they are still prone to being insulin resistant, and so they'll eat a healthy diet, and by injecting all this insulin under your skin, you will have high insulin levels, and you see it around that many type 1 diabetics actually gain weight, so they become overweight. And yeah, I see it around, and then gradually you gain weight and you start to increase your insulin more, and it's a vicious circle basically. And this is really important for type 1 diabetics to realize, that even though they are managing everything all right, you are still with high insulin levels, and that will still damage also, for example, things like your blood vessels, because if insulin levels are high, then you get this vasodilative effect of your vessels, and for a while it's good, like for short moments during the day, and I don't know when, maybe if you're exercising, that sort of things. But if it's chronic, it isn't, because your vessels are basically overstimulated all the time. And gradually they'll start to respond less to this. Maybe it's also a sort of resistance in a way. But your vessels being stressed, you can imagine that if it goes like this all the time, at some point it will become stiff, basically. And that sort of details that I didn't know even a year ago, by the way, but this is never, nobody tells about this, really. And it's crazy, because if you look at how type 1 diabetes is dealt with, like with any other disease, they treat the symptoms. People are obsessed with, they see high blood glucose, bad, so it has to go down all the way, like that. This or that is bad, so we have to eliminate it, and like that as well. And with type 1 diabetes, well, you have to reach the perfect A1C, manage your blood glucose, and the rest we won't talk about, because we don't have these big screaming markers that tell you that blood vessels are being damaged by increased insulin, for example. And yeah, the medical system is lacking here, because in my case, for example, well, I would like to do something about it. Find some nice solution to inject insulin closer to the liver or so, to reduce this insulin imbalance, that sort of things. I would like to use different types of insulin which are no longer available, because you get preferential policy from the insurer, and these things. But once you are optimizing your health, you start to learn about a lot of things as a diabetic, and that's for type 2 diabetics as well, that are not dealt with correctly. You don't get the right medicine when you need medicine. And of course, they don't give education about the diet as well. And they should teach you also about why you are following these diets, and what are the mechanisms. Instead of just telling me like, count your carbs and take your insulin with it, and if you do it well, then good job, and you'll be healthy.
Eat some Jello.
Yeah. And
it's
it's
crazy.
really, when you think about it, there are so many things they could improve still, but it's not worth it, because they don't gain anything with it. It's not that I will become 10 years older or so, and it's not even that they will save a lot of money in healthcare or so, but that last optimization will just make people lead a happier life, be more healthy.
No, man, don't worry
but it's
about
not
it.
worth it because it doesn't yield anything.
Just go down to your bus stop and follow the signs to the nearest Wegovy GLP-1 Ozempic. You're good,
They
man.
have the solution for you, Peter.
Lit up like
That's the same, because GLP-1 for type 1 diabetics, it's one of the situations where you could think that it's worthwhile because of our hormonal imbalance, which we cannot solve. We can never solve it, not even with carnivore diet.
And isn't it amazing when they brought it out? When they brought it in, the GLP-1 injection, they specifically said it was for type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
But now everybody's using it.
Yeah.
Everybody, and now they're selling it in pharmacies. You can walk into your pharmacy. A 16-year-old can pick it up. It's just.
And it's, by the way, it's still the wrong. Also in diabetes, it's the wrong way to solve the problem, because we have this glucose-insulin imbalance.
Yeah.
We should try to fix that.
Yeah, it's shifting the goalposts to another thing, right?
And you can go low carb. Also, for type 2 diabetes, this would probably solve everything in virtually all situations. For type 1 diabetes, I am on a low carb diet, and I will still have this imbalance in glucagon insulin. But by being low carb, this imbalance will be very small because your liver will be much less responsive to glucagon anyway. So there are less fluctuations in these hormones. And it's not like in a healthy non-diabetic person, but it's very good. And alternatively, I could take GLP-1 medication to suppress glucagon. But yeah, what else am I doing? A lot probably, and there are a lot of side effects with GLP-1. So.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, boys,
that's what it all comes down to.
You know what? I think this is a great one. I think we should probably sort of wind this one up because we have part 2, like Mark was saying, with Coach Stephen Thomas coming on Sunday. He's coming on live, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll get this out for Saturday. We'll get this will be a part 1. We'll figure this all out and I'll get it out for Saturday before Stephen. We're going to, we'll have some questions for him. This guy knows his, oh my God, I'm so excited and so
And
honored.
the good thing is he's going to stream it onto his YouTube as well.
Oh, cool. So we'll get some different angles. So we will be live on Sunday. I think we're going to go a little bit earlier if you're seeing this, because I'm going to try and get this one, this.
Yeah,
out.
it's at 5:30 Irish time on Sunday.
Okay, so it's a half an hour early. We're going to put this out. I'll get this little chat out before on Saturday. So if you're watching this, make sure you tune in tomorrow. We are live. This time it'll be 9:30 Pacific, 5:30 UK Ireland, 6:30 in the Netherlands, just to throw another time zone curveball into us. Yeah, but we will do our normal thing. We'll have Coach Stephen Thomas here. I'm excited to talk to him because he's been a pretty big figure in this space, and he brings a lot of calmness and logic to a lot of issues that are.
And the good thing I like about Steve, and I love Richard, but Richard's more scientific.
No, he's got all the technical side.
Yeah,
yes.
I get on well with Richard, but a lot of the stuff that he talks about, it's
yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Whenever I need to whenever I need to test or I think of a theory with a mechanism, that's the guy I go to. But I love Stephen Thomas and his take on,
he's straight to the point, isn't he?
Knows a lot.
He actually makes science very easy to follow.
Yeah, and he does some nice self-experimenting as well once in a while.
So join us on Sunday. Peter, any last words before we say goodbye?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the messages that I wanted to really get across as well. That as type 1 diabetics, you have to lead a healthy life like any person. And there's a lot that people don't tell you about, the doctors especially. And all these details will really help. And I went on a low-carb diet to learn more about these details, because clean diet, clean living will emphasize and clear up all the details that you didn't know about. You'll learn really a lot. And the biggest thing is that, insulin resistance is really an issue in type 1 diabetes. So if you want to get good control of not just your blood glucose, but also your metabolism, then learn about that one. And there are some good resources
In other words,
about that.
Call Peter. And where do people find you, Peter?
As the Dutch Carnivore, and on TikTok, I'm also on a channel called the Low-Carb Perspective.
Awesome. And Mark, what final thoughts?
No, it's been a pleasure, Peter. I always love having these conversations with you. I've learned an awful lot. I thought I knew a good bit about diabetes, but you're after opening my head to so many different things now. So, it's amazing. And I'm so looking forward to doing more. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm on social media, Fitness Beyond Time 01. And if you want to send me an email, just send me an email at nsmark93@gmail.com.
Awesome. And yeah, guys, I think these are things these conversations are necessary, because I think if everybody could just realize becoming your own N of one and feeling it for yourself and get into it, because this stuff matters. And, most people wait till they're desperate. You reach out for help. And if you get put in this fear box, then you're part of the system, and the system's just going to roll over you. It's clear now. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people, take things in their own hands, but they've done it by asking questions and getting into their own health. We've all been we've all seen the system fail. I think especially being a former pre-diabetic, it's probably the best decision I ever made was to take my own health. And if I listened to my doctor, I would be on drugs right now and probably in the system as well. So get into it. If you want to reach out, if you're a type 1 diabetic, please just reach out to Peter, man. He knows what he's talking about. Obviously, Mark knows. He's been helping people. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm at TonyStewartCoaching.com. I'm starting a newsletter for us and my stuff. So go onto the website, sign up. It will be coming out once. I don't know if Fleur's helping me out with it. It might be once a week or once a month, but it will keep everybody updated in the meat of the matter. We are live every Sunday. Thanks for being here, and we will talk very soon.
Thanks, guys.
Nope.